Hi, I'm Mark Cage, and I'm from Eddy County, and I love living here. Great place, and I want to be your sheriff. Well, I was originally born in Louisiana, and my father was a music teacher, a voice professor, and we kind of bounced around a little bit in Louisiana, and then we ended up at in Portales, and Dad taught at ENMU, Eastern New Mexico University, and that was about 1973 when I was in third grade. And I grew up in Portales, played football, ran track, tried not to get into too much trouble, but didn't succeed all the time, you know how young men get. And then I joined the Navy, and that was in 1982. I moved out of Portales when I graduated high school, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me, just about, at least at that time. That was where my life actually started moving upward and moving forward, and I actually started having a purpose in life. And I spent almost 11 years active duty, stationed all over the country, doing various things. And then I came back to Portales, and that was where I started my New Mexico law enforcement career. I worked as a dispatcher initially, and emergency dispatcher. Then I was hired at the ENMU Police Department, and that's where I became a certified New Mexico peace officer. Then I went back to Portales Police Department. I worked my way up from patrolman to detective and eventually patrol sergeant. I had an opportunity to work at the Roosevelt County Sheriff's Office for 4 years, and while my tenure at the Roosevelt County Sheriff's Office, I was fortunate enough to go and I was selected as the supervising agent of the Region 5 Drug Task Force. Additionally, while in that capacity, was selected as a task force officer, and I worked for 6 months exclusively with the DEA. And some of that work was down here in Eddy County, believe it or not, and that was where I first got my taste of Carlsbad and Artesia and the rest of Eddy County. Enjoyed it, really liked it. Didn't have any clue I would end up back here, at least permanently, and I am here permanently. After that, I went back to Portales Police Department, and I promoted back up to sergeant again, and then eventually to lieutenant. And I was the patrol commander for several years. I was interim police chief at Portales Police Department, and then incredible opportunity presented itself. My son was a police officer at Artesia Police Department, and he worked with Scott London. And he told me, Dad, Scott's going to get elected sheriff. And I said, really? Well, that's great. Because I met Scott. He worked briefly in Portales, and I met him, and I knew who he was. And he said, well, Dad, he doesn't have an undersheriff. And I said, no, that's not how it works, son. He's got an undersheriff. I guarantee he has one. He said, no, he really doesn't. And so I said, okay, whatever. And Scott got elected. And I was like, wow, good for him. Well, my son kept in contact with me. He said, Dad, he's looking for an undersheriff. He needs one. He said, you need to put in for it. I said, all right. So I talked to Scott, and I talked to Chief Don Rayleigh in Artesia. And so I applied for the job with Scott, and Scott selected me. And that's how I ended up here. And I had no earthly idea what a blessing it was being selected to come here and be the undersheriff of Eddy County. I've never had any more rewarding position in my life. I was accepted here by the community in both Artesia and Carlsbad, Loving, Hope, Malaga. It's just been amazing. So that's how I ended up in Eddy County, and I'm here to stay.